Democratic Alliance says government is failing to end load shedding and has made no real progress in implementing solutions. This comes after we were plunged into stage 6 load shedding on Friday. Let's bring in now Kevin Mileham, who is the DA Mineral Resources and Energy spokesperson. Kevin, thanks for making time for us. What do you think this return to stage 6 load shedding communicates or exposes about our government?
Well, I think it exposes the incompetence and the ineptitude of the way that the government ministers and the government departments are dealing with the energy crisis. I think that President Ramaphosa, his ministers in the electricity space, Pravin Gordhan, Sputa Ramakgopa and Gwede Mantashe, are pulling in different directions. There's no cohesive sort of vision or movement in any real way to address the electricity crisis, and they're actually failing to make real progress in addressing the energy action plan.
Mm-hmm. But would it be factual to suggest that there hasn't been, for instance, any progress made? I mean, there were times when the energy availability factor reached about 60%. In fact, this was consistent for a few weeks, which meant we no longer had, the higher stages of load shedding for some time. We had lower stages or no load shedding at all on some days. So some progress, you could argue, has been there. It just hasn't been consistent. Isn't that what the issue is?
It's interesting that you raise the energy availability factor reaching 60%, because in the past year it's only actually achieved that once, despite repeated promises from Minister Ramakgopa, from President Ramaphosa, from Gwede Mantashe, all saying, oh no, we're approaching 70% energy availability factor. Now you need to understand what the energy availability factor is. It's basically the percentage of Eskom's generating capacity that is actually providing electricity. And so the higher the energy availability factor, the more electricity is being produced by Eskom's generating units. And so it hasn't reached 60%. We've had, I think, 1 week in this entire year where we've hit the 60% mark, but it hasn't been consistently at that mark. That's the first point. The second is that there's been a lot of issues around outages, but the real issue and the real cause of the situation right now is that we just haven't been generating enough storage. We haven't been building up the reserves in Eskom's electricity supply in order to mitigate the impact of load shedding.
Eskom has explained why the recent return to stage 6. They explained the impact of the heat wave on their systems as well. Are you suggesting that there is more to this than the explanation we're getting from Eskom?
No, I don't think so. I think that our demand is fairly consistent. It operates in a band from about 29 gigawatts to about 32, 33 gigawatts. That's about the total demand that we have as a country. So I think that's been fairly consistent. What has been problematic is, first of all, the number of units that have been offline at any given time, the number of generation units that have been offline at any given time. And secondly, the fact that they haven't been able to replenish their reserves. But equally, we've seen that government has failed to build new generation capacity. It's something that I've been banging on about for many, many years now, and it's something that society, both experts and business and civil society have been saying is absolutely necessary if we are to address the electricity crisis, but it just isn't happening quickly enough.
Mm-hmm. So the energy action plan is meant to, stave off, especially the worst of load shedding. It really looks good on paper, and those implementing it say they're making a lot of progress. You have seen this plan yourself. Is it helping us at all?
Look, I think the energy action plan does have the right ideas. It does say what needs to be done, but I don't think we're seeing it being implemented quickly enough. So, for example, the implementation of the risk mitigation independent power producers procurement program, that was meant to be an immediate short-term fix, and there were hard deadlines that were imposed that people had to meet in order to be a bidder in that program, and a chunk of allocation of transmission capacity was allocated to that program. But we've seen, for example, that car power ships have not taken up that bid because they haven't been able to. They haven't met the deadlines, and yet they still remain a preferred bidder in terms of that program. That's one example. The other was that Minister Ramaphosa promised that we would see a speed up of the REIPP, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Procurement Program. That hasn't happened. Bid window 7 hasn't come out yet. But what we are seeing is that the private sector and the independent power producers are preventing even higher stages of load shedding. So we're seeing the rollout of rooftop solar, for example, on a massive scale. And that is actually reducing demand on Eskom.
This stage 6 load shedding, I suppose, once again raises the issue of new generation capacity. How is government doing on that front?
Government's doing poorly. It's not building enough new generation capacity. In fact, government is not building any new generation capacity whatsoever, and hasn't built anything since Medupi and Kwesile started way back in 2008, and has no plans to build any new generation capacity in the near future. What we are seeing, though, is that the private sector is coming in through independent power producers, and that was supposed to have sped up significantly, as I mentioned earlier. So bid window 7 of the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Procurement Program should have happened this year. It should have happened earlier this year. Hasn't come online, and it's unlikely to happen before Christmas. In fact, I think we'll probably only see it next year sometime. And you've got to remember as well that during the time of Mashele Koko and Brian Molefe, Eskom was refusing to buy power from independent power producers. So bid window 4 was stalled. Those projects that were in bid window 4, they couldn't close, they couldn't finish because they couldn't get power purchase agreements from Eskom. And that stalled stayed in place. That moratorium stayed in place for about 5 or 6 years. And we could have been a long way down the line of easing load shedding if they had allowed those projects to proceed.
When are we going to see the launch of bid window 7?
Probably March next year. That's the time frame I'm hearing bandied about at this stage. Obviously, one of the constraints in bid window 6 was transmission capacity. Those bidders in the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape couldn't proceed because there was insufficient transmission infrastructure to carry the power from where it's being generated to where it's needed. And so bid window 7 is probably going to be more geographically constrained. They're going to put geographical criteria and say you need to bid in these geographical areas in order to apply so that we have guaranteed transmission infrastructure that can carry that electricity to where it's needed.
And what about our energy master plan, the integrated resources plan? I mean, that still needs to be updated, amended.
Okay, so first we need to understand that the integrated resource plan is not an energy master plan, it's an electricity master plan. Energy is a lot broader than just electricity, but the integrated resource plan was updated in 2019, and it was out of date almost as soon as it was published. Going back to the energy availability factor, one of the issues that the IRP 2019 highlighted was that it relied on an energy availability factor of 75%. Well, we're a full 15 to 20% lower than that at the moment. And so we can't count on IRP 2019. We can't plan and model our supply and demand on 2019's IRP because it's outdated. Minister Mantashe has been promising an update to the IRP since the beginning of the year, and then he promised that it would be in October. Well, we're now end of November. There's still no sign of IRP 2023. I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon.
All right, Kevin Mileham, thank you so much for making time for us.